Kalispera και καλώς ήρθατε. Welcome, good afternoon. We will start with the panel. We are still waiting for Eleonora Di Maio, a city councillor from Naples, but I hope she will join during our introduction. And yeah, I'm very happy that we have this panel at this very fruitful and interesting conference that you have been participating over the last 2 days. This one is called From the Sea to the City, and will present the network that we have founded last year ago, 2020. It started with a big campaign with 5 demands or points of action that we wanted to bring forward for a more human rights-based approach on migration policy, with cities at the center, and network and coordinate between civil society organizations, grassroots movements, sea rescue organizations, and cities. And yeah, the goal is basically to overcome the current migration and asylum policy in the EU and put a new one forward where cities are in the center. It's a very large goal, but I think we need to have a strong vision. And I'm very happy that we have such a great panel today, which I will now introduce. But before doing so, you should also know who I am. I'm Malisa Zobel. I work at the Humboldt-Viadrina Governance Platform. It's an NGO. I'm a political scientist. And I think some of the people have seen me maybe yesterday in a panel, because we have brought forward this idea of having a European fund where municipalities could apply for the money of receiving refugees and the same additional amount for their own municipal development. And I'm very happy to introduce you Marie-Naas and her organization Sea-Watch, who is actually a founding member of From the Sea to the City network. She is the leader of the advocacy team at the German and at the European level. She is involved in search and rescue activities, but she also does back office work. And she is also a policy advisor for migration at the European Parliament. And she has studied development studies in Vienna and has worked in different projects in Cameroon and Egypt. Then we have Federico. He is a political scientist at the University of Bologna, but he was previously working at the city of Messina in Sicily as a deputy mayor. And he is joining us today as a researcher into European Union migration policies, but he's also a political activist, very involved in the Right to the City and the Municipalist Network. And yeah, currently he works at the University of Bologna in the Department of Political Science. And then we also have Matthias Mertens, who is a Belgian teacher and activist, but right now he lives in Greece on the Greek island of Chios. And he is a co-founder of Europe Must Act, a grassroots movement aiming at relocating people from the Greek islands, but he will give us a stronger idea of what Europe Must Act during our debate probably, and he's also part of the From the Sea to the City consortium. And then we are actually still waiting for Xavi as well, who's not here yet, from Barcelona and Comú and the European Municipalist Network. Let's see if he...
He had a problem to connect. He will be with us shortly.
Okay. Well, I think I'm just introducing him anyways. I was wondering whether I should start with the first question, but I think I'm introducing Xavi if he's joining in a few minutes. He's currently working in promoting local initiatives from the networking. As I said, he is a founding member of Barcelona and Comú and has worked as the co-head of its international group for 4 years. He is collaborating with the 99 van Amsterdam, a municipalist think tank based in Amsterdam, but working very transnationally, and other informal networks. And his focus is supporting local groups with the aim of creating a global network of organizations that could contribute to the transitions that we need: sustainability, decolonizing, feminization, and digitalization. And I hope he will be here soon. But before we are waiting too long, I would just say, since it's always better to introduce yourself than I could do this, let's start with the first round of questions. The way we will do it is that we will have like an input by each of the panelists that should rather be short. about 25 minutes. Then we have a second round of questions, and then we use about 20 minutes for the questions from the audience. So we would be very happy if you could pose your questions even during the talk if you want to, in the F&A or in the chat. And I will try to collect these questions and put them to the panel. So maybe starting with Federico, you could actually explain how did you start to work at this nexus between cities and civil society and social movements, and what your relationship to this is, and why do you think that the local level is so important in the struggle for fundamental rights, especially when it comes to the question of migration and asylum? Thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Malisa, and good afternoon, everyone. Really happy to be here, and thanks a lot for inviting me to this panel. Just as a very short introductory thought about the topic we're going to discuss here today, and that you were raising your question, I have to say, I think I like to say I've had the privilege in my life to see like this connection between civil society and institutions working on very important issues, in particular on fundamental rights, from very different perspectives. And I think this is very enriching, meaning that I could see this as a political activist at a city level in different platforms related to many different issues. But also, as you were mentioning, as a member of a local government in a city which, I mean, is one of the main cities of southern Italy, and especially in the period, let's say around 2014, 2015, experienced that very important, let's say, a very massive income of migrant ships, let's say migrant rescue ships that would arrive. And so had to deal, let me put it this way, with unexpected situations on a local level. Based on that, we realized, what I realized, let me put it this way, throughout my experience is that at a local level, you are confronted with very massive challenges at certain times. And these are those challenges that, you know, we always hear about, you know, big issues going on in the world, big topics, and in political debates in Europe, in also beyond Europe, of course. But then when it comes to the local level, it's where these big challenges become concrete, become an impact to the everyday life of people. We can talk like about big topics, but then in the everyday life of people, well, the impact you can see is on the very local level. That's what it happens. And on the local level is where you have local institutions, of course, but you also have civil society actors in many different ways. I mean, I've been active in movements, in collectives, so it doesn't actually need to be, you know, something like formalized civil society organizations. It can be in many different ways, but you have these people acting on the ground and trying to provide those answers that in most cases, governmental actors aren't able, or even also aren't willing to give. And this is essentially all the shortcomings of governmental answers. It's this feeling that in most cases fundamental rights are jeopardized by the inaction or by the very actions of governments. And this is exactly the point where this mutual support between local institutions and civil society actors can be absolutely important. We've seen this even more recently, also beyond the migration issue in the COVID-19 pandemic. I mean, the pandemic, we are all living in our different places. So we see how the response to this challenge has also been productive somehow when it came from this productive dialogue between these two different actors. This is how I see this interaction in very broad terms, and this is why I consider this so extremely important in our everyday lives.
Thank you. And since Xavi is finally here, let's give him the chance to introduce his view on how the local level is important, why it's important, and how he relates to this nexus between activism, civil society, and cities or municipalism.
Okay, first of all, thank you for inviting me. And second, I'm sorry because I got lost with the link and I was late and I couldn't find it. Very briefly, because I know we have not a lot of time. So starting from my experience, when I realized I've been an activist in social movements for many years. I'm now 41, so at least for 20. And a couple of years ago, we created with other activists Barcelona en Comú, which maybe you know a little bit about. And when we started creating contacts with other organizations, and we contacted many kind of people, many different people, we realized that there are three things that most of the most inspiring and impacting organizations that we met, that we had talked to, shared three things. The first one was that they were they were working locally. So they work in their city, in their town, their neighborhood with the people they had around. The other thing is that they had a global approach. So they didn't use this localism as something that made them against the others or any kind of nationalism or something like this. And the third one is that what we called in Barcelona, I don't know how translatable this word is the idea of confluence. So going beyond these traditional boundaries there are between the people who are in formal politics and those who are outside of the institutions. And also within each of these groups, sometimes there are historical fights between the anarchist and the communist or the whatever. So this idea of like, let's put apart these big things that are floating on the air and let's talk about concrete things, because when we talk about these concrete things, these boundaries disappear. We can do this. So this was for me a very important lesson learned, this idea of like, let's mix the forces, the energies that come from the institution and come from the outside of the institution. And in terms of how important is this localism, which is a word that I sometimes don't like because sometimes it's connected with like we first, and this is of course against any kind of idea that I have. I would say three things. The first one is that it's obvious, it's closer to people, it's closer to normal people who have and live the problems, or who people who see the conflict of what's happening around. And this idea of closeness is linked to democracy, not democracy as the political system, but as the way we relate, we build relations and we decide to do things together. You know? So the idea of closeness that allows to see power, privileges much more easily. The second one is that local level avoid theoretical debates like that are not useful, like euro yes or euro no. No, this debate that in Greece took so many time for many people, like, or this kind of debates that don't tackle what is actually happening to people, but are like very theoretical because we are not able to change anything on that level. Is something that is a debate that doesn't connect to people's life and doesn't connect to what we can do to change those things that we don't like. And at the same time allows focus on concrete goals. Let's focus on this. What can we do? What is the thing that we have to do here to solve this situation? And the third one, I go very fast because I know it's good to respect time. And the third one is more tactical. People maybe don't like this argument that much, but winning is essential. The small victories are essential because most people don't get active or don't get use the word you want, revolutionary, or don't become a person who wants a system change by reading Marx. Or maybe some do it, but this is a very, very little few who do that. People understand what's happening in terms of social fight and repression, by seeing that getting organized works. And small victories show that. So, and this we can't do at the European level. Even, of course, it's something that we have to end up being able to give answers to. But nowadays, we need people to get organized locally to be more and to be stronger. And for this, we need to do it at the level that we can actually have victories. And nowadays, because of the context of many things, this is locally, because locally it's much easier to, you know, to put at stake some powers. I think that's it. I don't want to make it longer.
No, thank you. It was very interesting. I think you also put on like a lot of points that have been discussed earlier today, that we need these kind of also empowerment movement moments where people feel like that they have some kind of like control or power over their own life and where they can actually do something. And the concreteness and the closeness is also a very interesting point. And I would like to give Marie Naas the floor. Because she's working at a sea rescue organization, and I think it's not clear for everyone why there is this immediate connection to the city and the local level, and maybe you can explain to us how that comes about. Thank you.
Thanks a lot, and hello everyone from my side. Yes, I can be very, very brief on this. Civil society organized in terms of conducting search and rescue in the Mediterranean. Basically because of two reasons. The main reason, of course, because civil society need to give some kind of answer to the dying in the Mediterranean, which is of course politically motivated. And then this also then immediately leads to the second reason, to also underline and to show that there is a European civil society present who does not agree with the xenophobic policies implemented by national governments in the European Union. So the political aspect of search and rescue, which was led by civil society, was immediately part of the whole idea and the whole movement in itself. But at the beginning, there was not that much a concrete institutionalized or organized exchange with the local level. Of course, a lot of activists who were part in search and rescue missions and also were part of building up structures which then led to the organizations we see today, were very much rooted in local structures, especially, for example, in Italy and also in Greece. But the need to really have organized ties really came a bit later, and I think the reasons for that are really twofold. I think especially in 2018, when we saw that the xenophobic atmosphere is pretty much escalating when it comes to the so-called migration crisis. So we had interior ministers in Italy and in Germany, which are pretty problematic, trying to implement very racist policies for the further externalization of borders. Far-right parties were rising and the whole public debate was really heated. And I think there it was really, really clear that another narrative is urgently needed. And this is only half of the story, that there might be some politicians and people and parties really standing for a different kind of idea how we should all live together, but a large part of population, municipalities and actors are not represented there. So I think in that moment it was really important to join forces, and then there was, of course, from the operational perspective of search and rescue organizations, the great first incident in 2018, when for the first time a civil search and rescue vessel was not allowed to enter port. So this was then really a precedent. And every time I think about that, every time I think back to 2018 and to this really heated summer, where it was the first time that vessels cannot really disembark people, there was an outcry. And I think it was really a heated atmosphere, and all the activists and people part of these organizations were really, really shocked, me included. And now we see that this is normal. And we the shift is really going into this is everyday business now. When we plan our operations, we calculate standoff time because we don't even expect to receive a port. And I think this was really a game changer. And there, of course, also from an operational perspective, there was a huge need to really engage with the local level, because national levels implemented policies which were not feasible for us anymore.
Thank you, Marie. Then I would give the floor to Matthias Mertens, and maybe you can also, I mean, you are working in a very heated environment, very politicized, and can probably very much relate to the points that Marie just raised about the whole very hostile climate. And I think this was also the environment in which you founded Europe Must Act, and maybe you can give all the other listeners an idea of what you do and how this came about.
Yeah, thank you very much. And also thanks to the other speakers, because just listening to the other speakers was already very inspirational. I kind of restructured what I'm going to say now based on what they have said. So Europe Must Act is a movement that was started by grassroots organizations that are active on the Aegean Islands, where they actively support asylum seekers and refugees. And we were founded back in March 2020. So this month we're celebrating our first birthday. We kind of, in a way, we're responding, or we're answering to two issues that have already been raised by the other speakers. Like what Federico said about the fact that local communities, municipalities, they are often the ones facing these massive global challenges. They're facing these very local, very concrete impacts. And this is very much the case here on the Greek islands. You have communities that are, for example, here Chios, where I'm based, has a population of 50,000 people. Over summer 2020, there were close to 6,000 asylum seekers and refugees residing on the island. Compared to the total population, that's more than 10%. That's has huge consequences for the local community, ranging from electricity, water, all these basic services, waste collection. All of these things come under pressure. The whole host community comes under pressure. Relating to what Javi mentioned, is that people here are very unheard by national governments. They're not being heard. At this very moment, the Greek government and the European Union are very much pushing through the construction of new camps that are just just a continuation of the existing policy of having mass containment on the islands, and are not sustainable solutions in any way. Another way that Europe Must Act is kind of answering some of the issues raised. Example issue raised by Javi is that people across Europe, in cities across Europe, far away from the Aegean, they see what is happening here on TV. They see what's happening on their Facebook feeds, but they feel powerless. It's far away, and it's so big and difficult to do something about this. It's so complicated. But what we've tried to do as Europe Must Act is by setting up city chapters across Europe, giving people the ability in their local community to get organized, to work together, and call on their municipalities, their mayors and municipal councils to take action, giving people that ability to organize, but also to score victories and have that sense that they're bringing change. Because we agree this is really important. And maybe to conclude is that we also look at the local level, at the municipalities, as the place where we can get out of the political gridlock that we have seen for the past 5-6 years. And here I'm specifically referring to the fact that the current situation of mass containment is not sustainable. A sustainable solution would require relocation of people off the islands across European states. Currently, European states are not interested in this at all. There's no willingness, there's no political will to develop a structured relocation mechanism. And this is why we're looking at cities and mobilizing people in cities to call for solidarity among municipalities, because the municipalities here really need European solidarity. And there's no solidarity among states, so hopefully by mobilizing people, by campaigning, we can create this solidarity at the municipal level. I'll wrap up here because I'm also conscious of the time constraints. Thank you very much.
Yeah, thank you very much, Matthias. I mean, this is also one of the reasons why we founded From the Sea to the City, right? To make visible that there are actually cities within Europe that would be willing to relocate and that are willing to receive, and that there is another Europe from the bottom up that is possible and that has a very different approach to these issues, and also would like to change the narrative. So you all mentioned the closeness, the concreteness, the importance of the local level, and I think a lot of the participants heard a lot of different proposals over these 2 days, how this is possible, and there's like different networks. So one of the questions that I would have is maybe because Eleonora is not here now. So Federico, maybe you can take this perspective a bit, having worked in a local government at a very critical time, and being in a, not like on the other side, of course, but maybe understanding the logic a bit more. How do you think, what is important that we take into account in fostering a closer cooperation and collaboration between civil society, important grassroots movements, and cities?
Yeah, thanks. I had to smile, like listening to this, you know, the other side. Yeah, no, because actually this is the feeling that sometimes we all have. I have to say, also among fellow activists and friends. Yeah, we do have this feeling of, you know, like one side is social movements, the other side is the institutions. And to a certain extent, that's also true. I mean, it's how it is. I think it's important, like also getting to the point of your question. I think it is actually important to know that these are separate entities with, let's say, certain different times, different logics, different languages. I mean, institutions are something, and movements and civil society is something else. This difference is important to know, and it's important to know also from our perspective, my perspective today as a person who is an activist in a political movement, who doesn't have anything to do with institutions today, that when I relate, when I'm in connection with institutions, when I'm collaborating with institutions, I cannot expect from institutions to have, like, to share exactly the same logics and the same goals that I do, because we're doing different things right now. And it's important to know that. It's important to have this mutual understanding. And I think that, like, in my personal experience, most of the problems came exactly from missing this point, either from one side or the other, sometimes from both sides at the same time, but this is actually what happened. Fortunately, I also have to say that migration policies, and in particular external migration policies, so a specific issue where local institutions formally have a very little role to play. So it's most of what they do, it's based on a political engagement rather than institutional tasks they are allocated to. As we're saying, like, fortunately, migration policies is a field where I didn't experience in my personal life any big clash on a local level. I would rather say that it's a successful story somehow of cooperation between civil society actors and local institutions, especially in terms of the capacity they have or we have had around different experiences in Europe and in the world of exerting pressure on upper governance levels, on which are the ones essentially that make decisions. So we are the ones who somehow try to to change things, to implement practices that respect human rights and that do what upper policies, or let me put it this way, policies designed at upper levels fail to do. So in this sense, I think that strong cooperation is easier somehow when we do share not only a common goal, but also a common enemy. And the enemy is not, for how I see it, it's not this or that government. The enemy is the logics behind it. The enemy is the policies that we see today. And these policies can be more clearly seen, more visible at times, can be shocking at times, as Mari was saying rightly about the closing harbor policy in Italy in 2018. But these policies don't stop at a certain point, unfortunately. I mean, they go on and on. So this was like a shocking moment for all of us. I remember we had the last cabinet meeting on that day when the first, like the Aquarius case came out. And so we stood in solidarity with Aquarius. So it was shocking, but...
Sorry to interrupt, but maybe not everyone knows it. So maybe can you explain the Aquarius case for the participants?
Yeah, yeah, sorry, right. It was actually this... yeah, no, it was actually a case that the first incident in which a civil society ship was not allowed to enter Italian territorial waters and to disembark in Italian harbors. It was in June 2018, and that very day, there were many mayors and local governments, especially in southern Italy, like Messina, Naples, Palermo, and many others, who clearly said, okay, our harbor is open. If you want to come to our city, you are free to do that. And of course, this had no legal value at all. It wasn't, we couldn't do that, but it was a political statement that many people speaking in the name of the local communities were saying. So it was also a term, in a way, I really saw a clash between the political representation that there was. So we had local communities saying to the interior minister, you are not speaking in the name of us. I mean, we have other stances on that, and that you can actually come here. So just to close this whole argument, I would say that in these cases where we do see these policies continuing time over time, maybe less visible, maybe less shocking, but equally terrible for the human rights of the people involved, the capacity of building and maintaining over a long time this relationship between civil society and local governments is crucial, because actually we are powerless in terms of the policies that we see. And the only way, in my experience, to not only to resist, but to completely change the narrative, being proactive and saying, we are going to change these policies, is to work together. And it's not easy, but we must do that.
Yeah, thank you, Federico. This is a very interesting point because it was raised, I think, in one or two panels before ours. And I unfortunately have forgotten the name of the speaker, but he said, so we need to be careful that cities do not only like promote themselves as being very diverse, but then don't act upon it, right? But on the other hand, you just showed that when it came to externalization, when it came to human rights violations, the cities in Europe were actually the only ones holding up fundamental rights, holding up human rights. I mean, it's true for the Aquarius and for the whole question of sea rescue, but it's also true for relocation. And when Moria was on fire, there were a lot of cities saying, well, we are able to receive people and we want relocation and we stand for a different Europe. So how much impact is in this? Is this just a political statement that basically is not followed up on? Or does this actually change something? Is there an impact in the, let's say, advocacy of cities? Yeah, this would be the question that I would like to give to the panel. Yes, Marie, please go ahead.
Thank you. Yes, I think this really has to be answered with a strong yes. It definitely does change advocacy work. It does change the public narrative, and it also does change the perception of the whole topic within communities. So, for example, in Germany, there is this initiative Seebrücke, which was founded in 2018, exactly as a response to the closed port policies. And now in Germany, Seebrugge managed to have 235 safe harbors there. So there are mayors pledging and saying we have space and we would like to welcome people, and we are there to have a clear stance against the national policies of the national government and also of the European Union. And I think this is incredibly strong from a political perspective. And I think there are a lot of initiatives are going on, initiated by Seebrugge and also with others, to really try to change law there, and also to really speak with the municipalities and see how federal law can be changed accordingly, so that municipalities finally really have the possibility to welcome people. Because one is, of course, the public expression of doing so, and then in practical terms, sometimes legally you have to adapt. And I think these steps are also really important. And then what we can see there is that this might be more difficult then also for the local governments, because then somehow they have to deliver, and their proper political work starts. And I think there Seebrugge did an absolutely amazing job. And now we have governments within Germany willing to take these legal steps. And I think this is a huge achievement. And then also in terms of civil society, when we see how the whole atmosphere was created around this whole topic of migration, and then we see that Seebrugge managed to have 300,000 people going on the street and really showing solidarity and willingness to welcome people. This is incredibly strong and really, really important for the activists, for the people on the move, and also for politicians seeing that maybe it's not the best idea to continue the xenophobic path. So I think this is really, really incredibly important.
Thank you. Yes, and maybe this is because we are quite an international audience here, which I think is really, really nice, because not often do these debates actually really happen across Europe. But just to explain what Marie said, so the city of Berlin is actually suing the national government. So that's quite incredible. They're actually suing the interior minister and are trying to force them to change the law and build up this pressure and to actually be able to relocate people from the Greek islands to Germany. I saw Xavi doing this, which I think means he's in agreement. Do you want to add something?
Thank you. Yes, first of all, I have to say that I liked a lot what Marie said. I fully agree. And I would like to add something in the same line. I think I also like what Federico said about the enemy, no? About not looking at some specific people. Of course, there are some specific people who are our enemies, but it's also more intelligent to look at the system. And this is a bit controversial, because if it's the system the problem, what can I do? How can we really change that? And the system is a system of values. It's a way of understanding the world. It's the way we relate. And with this, I would like to say two things. One is that we are now in a civilizatory crossroad. So we are now, reaching the limits of the earth and the limits of the idea of putting borders between people, because this is not sustainable anymore. And we have to really think about changing ourselves. And I know this is a bit controversial, but I don't want to not say it. I think we need a different spirituality, a different understanding of what humankind is, about our role in this world as another animal that has to relate to the others and that has to relate with their peers in a collaborative way. Like, hey, let's have a world in which everyone can live, which is a very natural understanding for everyone. But then you look at politics, and because politics is a mess, it looks that it's normal that people are fighting all the time. And this is something that I really see in these demonstrations that Marie explained, and in these concrete acts as Berlin is doing now, suing. Because something that it's part of the problem, in my understanding, is that we live in a society, in a culture that tell us, just do it, everything is possible, and you can just do this and have whatever. And this is not the world. And we have to also be clear with people, like, we are not changing the world from one day to the next. Even if we organize the strongest and the coolest and the most radical revolution, change is slow. And we can't keep selling shit as capitalism do. Like, if you go to this demonstration, everything will be fixed. No, because we need to change ourselves, and we need to change the understanding. And sorry that I make it too long. I just finished with this. In Spain, we had something amazing that happened in the 30s. Franco, fascist dictatorship, made a coup d'etat in 1936. And we had thousands of people from other places of the world coming to fight against this coup d'etat, because they understood that here in Spain in that moment, it was crucial that the war. And this understanding, this of internationalism, I hate these crappy and difficult words, but this understanding of that we believe to a whole, I think it's essential. And this is something that we have to change little by little. So I would encourage everyone to do something around themselves, because this changes the culture. And if we change the culture, politics, or those people who want to be in politics, will do what we want. Because, yeah, sorry.
No, it's fine. I think
excited
to cut all of you a bit shorter, because I think people get lost, especially in these digital formats, if one talks too long. But I think you're raising two very important points that Leoluca Orlando yesterday also raised. And I think not a lot of people make this connection, but he actually is very famous for fighting the mafia in Palermo. And how did he do it? He did it by a change of culture. And that's basically what you're saying too. We need to change the values around migration. We need to change the narrative around migration. And this will only happen if we change it in ourselves, but also, of course, in others. And I think this is also a point that many Europeans are feeling, that we are always claiming, oh, Europe stands for human rights, Europe stands for welcoming. But then you see what Europe really does. I mean, these pictures that we see from the borders, people being hit, people being pulled back into torture. Just for a lot of people, this is a strong contradiction, and it does something to do. It does something to trust in democracy. Even if you're not like completely like a progressive or something, you will still feel that there's a contradiction between what Europe says it stands for and what Europe actually does. But now I made a comment myself, which is not my role as a moderator. And Matthias has raised his hand, so I will quickly give over to him.
Yeah, I just wanted to chip in on everything that has been said so far. Is that I think the context where I'm in currently, the Aegean Islands, is a very good example of how top-down decision making can go horribly wrong. We really have this sense of, we are here on the ground in reality, and then the decisions that are being made in Brussels are just, they do not take this reality into account. They're based on assumptions that just do not make sense, that do not correspond with the reality here on the ground. Just to give an example, like the new camps that are being built, the assumption is that asylum procedures are going to be handled very quickly and very swiftly, and that returns, deportations are also going to be done very swiftly, very easily, which is completely untrue. Asylum procedures are very long, and sending people back to the countries of origin is also highly complicated, especially now with COVID. And the local aspect here, why organizing and campaigning at local level here is so important, is because it allows it allows you to kind of bypass a lot of the polarization, I believe, and a lot of the disinformation that exists on this topic of migration and asylum. because you can speak in this local context, and as Federico said, like you can speak about very concrete, very practical problems instead of theories, of conspiracy theories, even of invasions and Western European culture being under threat and stuff like that. And yeah, this is really essential that we can get around or leave behind this polarization and talk about solutions that take reality into account.
Yes, very important point. Thank you. Does anyone want to take up on this? Matthias, can you put your hand down again as a general rule? If not immediately, then I would like to bring back the discussion again a bit to the point of success, because this is something that you as the panelists have also stressed now, right? And I think it was Xavi who said these small victories are very important. And sometimes I have the feeling also in like building a network, all of us, we need to, to also showcase our small victories, even if they're not big. I mean, this was also a point that Xavi mentioned. We need some kind of, I'm now saying it very rationalist, we need some kind of expectation management. Not everything can change immediately and very quick. And of course, this network between cities and civil society won't like change everything, but our vision and our what we want to do is to, of course, overcome it. But we need to also think of the small victories. So I would actually like you to draw up on your experience where you have the feeling that this kind of cooperation between civil society and cities and different other people working at the local level has been successful in bringing forward better policies or better practices for migrants and refugees.
Can I say something?
Jan Braat, yes, maybe you are not officially part of the panel, but I actually.
Oh yeah, I just. Sure,
go for it, but please introduce yourself quickly.
Yeah, sorry, I just put my hand down and I got someone to unmute me. So I know I'm always mixing up with panels, which I'm not allowed. I'm Jan Braat. I'm a senior policy advisor on asylum and migration in the city of Utrecht in the Netherlands. I think it is very important to change the narrative. That's one of the most important issues on the moment, and we have to start that at the level of NGOs and at municipalities, because there is another level, and there we also have to show. It's also said we have to show success. You know, probably also I've told it, and my colleague Nina Oekes, who is also in this conference, that with Plan Einstein, all the way of an asylum center, and our undocumented migrants policy, which we changed the national policy, and now working together with the national government to get, and that's another important issue, to get solutions. You have to have durable solutions, and you have to show them that everyone to be that it's possible. But I think what is lacking, although I'm also a member of Eurocities Working Group Migration, and the vice mayor who yesterday is the chair of the Social Fair Forum, I think it's lacking a bit that all the successes that are booked on the local level or sometimes NGO level is not spread around. No one knows. Everyone is still trying to do it on themselves. So I think to get a European local movement and NGO movement around, we have to think about how we organize that and how we build on the successes that are booked in maybe Barcelona or in Utrecht or in Milan or whatever, and that is lacking on the moment. Otherwise, we are all struggling a bit and talking a lot with ourselves. But and that's my last point. I think we have to be bold, and I think we have to have confidence in our own changed narrative, and then put it forward, and don't be scared of opposition that will be there. That for sure will be there. But we can only change it if we jump into the arena, but we have to do it together. And I think then I know from the European Commission that they really want to work with cities, and also I think NGOs, but really also want to work. And I think that is very important, because then the national government and the politics there can be battled, because then they are more in an alone position and not in the positions that they think they are invincible.
Okay, yeah, thank you, Jan. Actually, Jan and Niend participated in one of the From the Sea to the City panels about 3 months ago, and we will have a report out where actually this really good example of the Plan Einstein, very innovative way of housing, of a solution to the housing problem in Utrecht, actually for refugees and newcomers, but also for the residing population, will be presented. So this is actually a way of, and whoever is interested can actually download it from our website, from the sea to the city.eu soon. I think it will be there about next week or the week after. But it's very important, the point that you raised about having confidence and actually networking more together, which would bring me to a different question. So how we can actually build these stronger networks together, because there are actually already a lot of networks out there, but all of them seem to move forward in their own way. So one of the questions would be, what is important from your perspective, people on the panel, but also, of course, participants in the chat and listening to us, in building these stronger networks, that we could actually bring about a Europe that it has a different policy with regard to migration. In a sense, Europe Must Act is also a network in itself that is part of a network. So maybe this is also part of the answer.
Yeah, maybe since you mentioned our name, I'll pick up on this. Yeah, I think one of the one of our aims, really, very early on when we started Europe Must Act last year, was collaboration and networking, connecting networks, connecting organizations, and then with a specific focus on grassroots. Connecting grassroots organizations that are active in the Aegean, but also grassroots organizations that are active very, very locally in cities across Europe, because we share the same values and we share the same concerns, and so this is, for us, very essential. And we've kind of always had this policy of the logo doesn't matter, the names don't matter. It's about the ideas, it's about the policies. That's what it really is about. But yeah, there isn't really there isn't really the perfect one solution of how can we strengthen these collaborations. I think it's hard work. It's events like this one where organizations or representatives from different networks, different institutions can meet each other and engage in dialogue with each other. Yeah, there's no one perfect solution for this.
Thank you. Does anyone else? Yes, Xavi, please. And yeah, you need to unmute. Yes.
Me or someone else first?
No one else raised the hand. You can go ahead.
Okay. The first thing that I would say when you say what would we do, what should we do to build this network, is exactly this, exactly what we are doing now. I don't believe that much, or maybe I believe in it, but as the end of a process, in informal networks. Formal networks are always the crystallization of an ecosystem. I would like to use network with no capital letters, you know, as an ecosystem that is connected. And for this, I would like to make a point on not devaluating local things. So of course the network is important, and I really think it is. But I think that the Unteilbar demonstration, huge demonstration in Berlin a couple of years ago, was very influenced by what it was done in Sicily some months before. So, and when I mean Sicily, I mean Messina, or because Federico is here, in many other places. Spreading small examples are extremely useful. So let's not forget, because sometimes we jump into the network and we become like networkers, and then no one is doing the actual thing. This said, something that I in general think we lack, something that is missing in general, is strategic debates among people who are doing similar things, but sometimes don't talk to each other and don't align efforts. Now I'm working for the city of Amsterdam, and we are organizing a forum in April and May with 5 different topics or clusters. And one of them is migration, racism, anti-colonialism, and borders. The name we still didn't find, but it's all this. And one of the things that we are organizing with this is some sort of follow-up of this event. So a meeting in which we want to invite different organizations who are working on this to debate about strategies, to debate what we could do together, what we could do if we unite forces, or maybe it's a campaign what we can do together, but keeping, you know, uniting the points or the dots of people who are doing things, not by creating another structure, but by putting them in touch to debate. This is something that I appreciate, and that's what I accepted this invitation, but I think, because I think you're doing this, and I think it's very useful.
Thank you, but also very important to raise this point that, of course, the local level and what really happens is equally important. I think Federico and Marie, you had less of a Redebeitrag in German, is what we say. I'm at a loss to translate this, so I would give you the opportunity to actually say something if you want to, before we go into the audience questions.
Yes, thank you. I just also would really like to underline that I very much agree with you, Xavi. I think this is really important what you just stressed. And I think that maybe where we could be a bit better, or where we all together can maybe improve somehow, is how to build bridges, in the sense that we learn from each other what is happening in the different local levels, to understand the local and national context, and then also can adapt our own struggles, movements, and policies accordingly. And I think there, what we really need is, and we have that already in a very nice way, but maybe we can create more understanding also of the specificities within the different local moments, because I think this is really important also when we formulate demands, or just to understand what is happening in Sicily at the moment. What is going on there? Like, what do people think about the new government? How is this and that perceived? How is the press outlet speaking about search and rescue at the moment here and there? I mean, just to understand the atmosphere at local level. And I think this is something where bridges somehow can help. And I think very much what we do here is something like this already. And maybe we can be more outspoken on that in the future as well. And then also just 2 things is that I think what we all have to have in mind, and I think there it is really important to see that we understand the local level better, is but also that we see that for example, safe harbors, cities and municipalities saying there are safe harbors now, that this is not becoming some sort of fig leaf, and not stays in a symbolic moment, but that we all together don't forget that we are not ready, that this is not the end, but that we really have to build up on that, because otherwise I fear a bit that this will then be weakened also by the public narrative and then going somewhere, because I think the achievements were so great in the last years. So I think we all together should brainstorm and see how we could build more, construct something around the symbolic moment. And then one last point, and then I'm done. I also think what is also very important is that we remember ourselves and really define that we see that there are shrinking spaces, and that we really also see that, for example, core demands are not hijacked by other policies. For example, when we see the relocation, which is a super important core element of solidarity among member states, and also simply bringing people to a destination, when it comes, for example, to search and rescue, we have to be careful that we are not complicit somehow in building the idea that disembarkation is conditional to relocation. And there, sometimes the devil lies in the details, and there I think it is really important that when we urge for relocation and urge for pledges from several member states, that we understand what we ask there and don't forget a certain legal framework, which is really important, because otherwise they fool us.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's part of the political struggle. I think you're completely right. And I think a similar development is actually true with regard to community sponsorship. So a lot of it is used to say, well, if your communities want to actually receive, why don't you participate in the UNHCR classical community sponsorship programs, which is great. And I think everyone should do it. But it's also difficult if it's presented as an alternative, because people are arriving and the people are here and they need to be relocated. And so the political struggle often is very difficult, and it's very important that you stress this point, to be very careful with how these cities are also then used. But before we move to the audience questions, and I would encourage the listeners to actually post some questions into the chat or into this F&A chat, I want to give Federico a chance to say something, and then I would suggest that we move on with some questions of the audience.
Yeah, thanks. I was really inspired by the last comments of Xavi and Marie. I'm very much in line with what you were saying, and in particular, this reminds me a lot of something that I was very much obsessed with while I was in the city government, which is the long-term sustainability of what we do, which is the idea that we know that we are here now. We are trying to make the best possible use of the institution while we are serving in the institution, but things change. So then we have elections, we have new governments, and maybe some opportunities that we used to have, we won't have them anymore in future. So it is important to have this strategic thinking and to have this idea of going not only dedicating time and efforts to important practices, as I was saying in previous interventions, but also to this idea of long-term sustainability and of strategic impact on the core elements of the policies that we have today. And to do so, I think that there are a lot of lessons that we can learn. I think there are a lot of dark sides, a lot of challenges and of shortcomings that we experienced in our personal situations. But at the same time, I think there are also successful stories, which we should look at, not with this idea, okay, let's copy this model, or like this is the best way. No, it's not, it doesn't work like that. Also because each local context is very much different. But it's the idea that we can get inspired, we can grab something, you can just discuss. This is also the idea of the networking with not a capital N, as Xavi was saying. And I have to say that this is something that is related to this institutional experience, but it's also very much in line with what I'm doing as a researcher. I mean, this is something that I see, like as a researcher, I study this, no? I delve into these things that happen, and I try to grab something from all these things that I read. And then my idea is I want to give something back, you know? It's also, besides the academic contribution that I can give, for me, it's important that what I study can also be an element of discussion for other people that can make a concrete use of these kind of things in their actual work to change policies. It's the societal impact of things. And to do so, I believe that this idea not only of translocalism, so this idea of local connections between different places, but also the idea of intersectionality is crucial. It's, as you all were saying, it's what we're doing here. It's what we need to do also in future, in my opinion. And that's the only way I see to have a systemic impact, which is at the end of the day the only way to really give a different answer to these questions that we are asking ourselves, and we've been doing so for quite a long time.
Thank you, Federico Alagna. And now I would pose a question, maybe actually to the whole panel, but maybe even directly to you, because it's something that you just mentioned. You stressed the importance of like the different local contexts. And there is a question from someone anonymous. And the question is interested in the differences between cities. How is the cooperation between cities in the north of Spain versus, let's say, the cities of south of Spain different with regard to cooperation? It seems difficult to imagine a unified and coherent action at the European level with all these differences. Would you agree, or would you actually not? And it's actually nice because I think we are everyone is very much on the same page in this panel. So this gives a bit of a different opinion. So maybe who wants to take it first? Do you want to continue, Federico? Sure, go ahead.
No, I don't know. I don't know if I have an answer today, so I can try. But like very shortly, it's. I think the question itself is in line with a bit with the approach we're having, meaning that no, I can't see a unified approach. I can't see a unified answer all the way around. The point is, regardless of the specific context, I do believe that it is important to see how this connection can be made. And I'm sure that the connection that you can make in Barcelona is completely different than the connection that we can make in Messina. And this is normal. I mean, and this is also the importance of understanding and thoroughly investigating the local contexts and knowing, and also what I was saying before, no, in terms of we don't have a best way to apply. There isn't anything like a model. Each and every time that I hear, you know, this is the name of the city model, I feel like, oh no, we don't have a model. I'm scared of models. I think we need to make experiments on the ground, being humble, saying, okay, we can do mistakes. We can make mistakes. It happens, but we try, and then we see what can, let's say, not only how this can be useful for the local situation, but also if a big if, and how this can contribute to a better understanding for other places. And that's, yeah, the whole idea of before.
Perfect, thanks. Anyone else? And maybe I can put in a bit more strongly this question, because what about Central Europe? I mean, there we have a national context that is very hostile, cities that have not openly, or only some, openly declared to be able to receive and stand for a human rights-based migration policy. How can we maybe bridge these kind of differences? Everyone is at a loss. Okay, so no one wants to take that. Yes, Xavi wants to. Okay, go ahead, please.
Of course, I don't have an answer. This has to be clear, as Federico said. I like a lot the idea that Federico now said, that we should have the right to try, and we have to think how we ended up having these policies. And this is because we have the concept of a central state that has to defend their what's the name of the frontiers, no? And this is a concept from the Middle Age. This is not something that is related to what's happening now. And I say this because we have to open the discussion, giving, sorry, I don't know how to say it. We have to create, in those places where there's the conflict, we have to open participation and see what's coming from there. Real participation. And real participation is what, in general, the state doesn't want, because real participation means conflict. And we have to have this approach in all the places, so that we end up, because this is my understanding, no one wants to be on the border. No one wants to keep the frontier. No one wants to be there, because it is violence. So I don't think we can really now think what we could do from the EU level to change national politics. What we have to push is for what Zapatistas always say. We want to manage ourselves, and we want everyone to manage themselves. And if we invite everyone in Poland, in Hungary, I mentioned these countries because we have close to fascist governments at the national level in these countries. So we have to invite people locally to think about this and to develop strategies to welcome people and to deal with difference and migration. And then we'll change the culture locally, and the other will come up naturally.
Thanks. Yeah, they actually, especially in Poland, there are a lot of cities that actually do a lot of good stuff. But if you remember, for example, the mayor of Gdańsk, a city on the Baltic Sea, I mean, he was killed basically for standing up for human rights and for refugees, and was killed by a knife attack. So I think there's also a bit of a fear of these cities that actually do a lot of very good practices on the local ground to do this kind of like stronger advocacy and have this big visibility. And I think there's a lot of, for us as a civil society, to show solidarity in their fights that they have, and maybe also have the bridge between things like climate change, fighting for the right to abortion in Poland. That was a huge issue just now, and to support them in this, and then maybe at a later step we can also be a bit more visible with the other things. Okay, I don't see any more questions from the audience. I would just give maybe a 10 seconds. Is there in the chat? It's very long, so I would really like, I mean, it's completely fine for you to post long comments, but if you want me to ask it actually to the panelists, then I saw a comment about Frontex. I couldn't really follow it in detail because I was also trying to listen to the panelists, but it says somehow that Frontex is the elephant in the room, and this is of course also true. There were today a lot of hearings about the pushbacks that Frontex has done. I'm not sure what the question is, but I would really, I'm just giving it to the panel. Maybe someone wants to address this. Yeah, Xavi, or maybe Marie first and then Xavi second, or
Yeah, I wasn't able to read the whole question myself either, but Yeah, maybe if the person who submitted the question, when you say it's an elephant in the room, it sounds a bit like everybody tries to avoid to speak about Frontex, but everybody is aware that it is there. It would be interesting to see why you have that impression. I think that everybody is fully aware of what the agency is doing and how the how the whole narrative around the agency can be understood publicly. But still, I think it is not an elephant in the room, but on the contrary, I think what we are here now today is to clearly show that there's a civil society and municipalities working exactly against this idea of how we live together in Europe as Frontex is promoting it, but promoting alternative ways of how we would like to see our communities living together and dealing together. So yeah, I would say no to your question. I don't agree that Frontex is the elephant in the room. But if you would like to have more in-depth exchange on the agency, then of course I'm happy to participate.
Xavi now, thank you.
I raised my hand quickly, even I had talked before, because I want to bring something that is not very good or is not bringing like good vibe, and I didn't want to do it at the end. I think we are in an extremely bad situation. This is the current moment of the state of art, let's say. I really think the economic situation is getting worse. People are getting afraid, and the narrative that many of the politicians and big powers are creating is like, fight for yourself. This is this is the wildest world, and nothing matters. Fuck the world. And many people, because they don't have another narrative, are buying this. And I agree with Marie. I mean, Frontex, I don't know, maybe the person who said it didn't want to say that we were avoiding it. But I think Frontex, I can't talk about Frontex because Frontex is 3,000 million bigger than us. Unfortunately, this is the situation. And we can't put ourselves in front of Frontex and say, fuck you, we're going to destroy you. I'm sorry, unfortunately, this is not the situation. We have to have a different strategy. And when we are pointing about fighting this war of guerrillas, like, that cities are, or local municipalities and towns are, it's because we can't fight, because we don't have tanks, because we don't have the money and the resources that fucking Frontex has. This is one point, and the other point is that I want to make is that this is not only, most people who are here I think would agree with me, because otherwise wouldn't be in this panel, but this being a nice Christian who loves people from the other side of the world, or because they are black, poor people, our lives are at stake if we don't solve the problem of borders worldwide. We have to think this way, to make an offer to our people, to the citizens of our cities and of Europe, asking them to think about a world without wars, because a third world would be disaster. And there's people moving around and trying to save their lives, running away from horrible situations. And if we don't tackle this, we'll have even bigger problems than we have now. Yeah, that's it. I just wanted to make the point that it's not about being generous, it's about being aware. We have to bring this awareness to our society.
Yes, thank you. We have about like 7 minutes left, because I was told by the organizers that we have to close at 4:28. It's actually just 6 minutes. And Xavi, you have already done somehow your like overall statement. If you would be fine, then I would give the three other panelists the opportunity to have like 2 minutes roughly of last points that you really want to make that the audience should take away. And I also wanted to say thanks, Marie, for stressing that, of course, we address the elephant in the room. And I also think it's not, I mean, everything is always every kind of good solution is presented as a pull factor. And we cannot like go into these kind of discussions and not work for positive solutions just because someone else could present it as irrationally as a pull factor. It's a very difficult environment that we are in, but we still have to continue to do so. And I think civil society, also the examples that we had about this very fruitful cooperation between cities and civil society has actually done at least a little bit to change the narrative that we have around migration. Ladies first, I would say. So Marie, then Matthias, and then Federico, or Federico and Matthias, that you can choose yourselves.
Thanks a lot. I think content-wise, I don't have a lot to add because I think that we had a very, very nice, fruitful exchange. Much appreciated. In terms of, pull factor, I think what is super important for us is that we conquer the space to counter and to create counter narratives to that story, and should never be afraid how the other side could use our movements and our engagement in a toxic way, because I think if we start with that, then we are lost. So I think for me, it leaves just to say that I think we need this more often. I think it is super interesting and is always giving new food for thought to our everyday work. And that's it. Thank you very much to my fellow panelists. And I think this was a very, very nice exchange. And I think we really need this more often. Thank you.
You have to decide, or should I choose?
Yeah, no, thanks, Matthias. Yeah, so thank you so much. So yeah, very quickly, also from my side, nothing to add content-wise. I think that most of the most important things were already said. It just comes to my mind, you know, as Xavi was saying, I think in his first intervention, one of the key words of the municipalist tale has always been confluence. Now we've been just talking a lot about confluence in the municipalist frame. I would say that right now what comes to my mind is, yes, confluence, but also contamination. I think the great thing of this kind of meetings, of debates, is this contamination between different approaches, different perspectives. This enriches me a lot. And you know, it's something like truly that it goes to the bottom of what we do. I mean, it's not something that you say because you want to be polite. No, it's true. It's true because it helps shifting perspectives. It helps understanding a bit better and in a wider context what you do. So yeah, let's keep doing this. This is the great message in a nutshell of what I take home from this panel. And that's why I really want to thank the organizers, to thank Melissa for what you've done, and of course also my fellow panelists, Matthias, Marie, and Xavi. It was really great, and thanks to all those who listened to us.
Thanks.
Yeah, I think I can only echo what has been said so far. Yeah, so just gratitude for having this moment, having a contagion, as Speaker Federico said. It's very much part of the current times, contagious. Yeah, the importance of strengthening these connections between different networks and different organizations is really essential. And as Marie said, kind of claiming our space and making the case for alternatives, that there are viable alternatives, that there is a different way, that we don't have to get stuck in this idea of push and pull factors, that there's much more than this. And yeah, maybe just to conclude, I think again here the local level is so important. Just very concrete example that I think many of you will be familiar with from here in the Aegean Islands are the big camps that will have been closed very recently, but that existed on Lesbos and Leros, community-led accommodation for very vulnerable refugees, and these alternatives exist. They're viable. They can be implemented, and yeah, they have to be explored, considered, and embraced by governments and institutions.
Thank you. That was one of the most harmonious panels that I've experienced. I hope you as listeners enjoyed it as much as I did. And it was asked, thank you to all the panelists. It was really great talking to you, great input. And also the last sentence that there are always, of course, alternatives and another policy or politics is possible. And you can, of course, also get involved in From the Sea to the City. We have bi-weekly calls. There is an internet page that I quickly post to the into the chat. There will be a networking possibility workshop just after this one. So starting in 2 minutes with Alina from the Seebrücke. Where you can put maybe some of the things that we discussed into practice. And for all the people from the cities listening, for example, Nien and Jan Braat from Utrecht, it would be great if you get involved in our conference in June that we are planning. We are planning a big conference with cities where they ideally take a big stance for a different migration policy and being able to welcome and receive and relocation efforts in June. And yeah, let's keep you updated on this process. And thank you very much. It was a pleasure. Thank you. And also thanks to Nikos and Interalia for this great conference. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Melissa. Thank you, everyone. Federico, Matthias, Mari, Xavi, for joining. I just posted once again the link to the following panel starting effectively now. So thank you once again. We copy and paste the link and meet you in a minute. Thank you.